Tonight, on a very special...
Commercial diving for
F-25 key?
The date is April 8th, 1980. A group of scientists are conducting an experiment on opening portals into different dimensions using stolen technology from Area 51.
It's too much. Shut it down,
said one scientist.
Shut up, it'll be fine,
replied another. Two of them were situated at a wide control panel in front of a window, looking into the rectangular window in front of them, and through it was the testing chamber. Inside was a concrete floor, Tesla coils protruding from the brick walls and pointing at the middle of the room at a CRT monitor. Its wires run from its behind through an opening in the thick protective door next to the window and connected to a wall of electronics. More wires and blinking lights were openly displayed along most of the wall, as if its entirety was an electronic mass. The Tesla coils inside the chamber were flashing thick bolts at the monitor, yet it somehow never turned off, and the screen never glitched. On the screen was a spinning 3D render of the Earth with a black background. "Hey boys, smile!" one scientist exclaimed as there was a bright flash of white light from behind most of the scientists. The flash came from a Polaroid camera. One scientist had taken a picture of their current situation.
"Come on, stop with the distractions, Cooper,"
said one of them, directed at the scientist who took the photo.
"If this thing is really alive, then we can't risk messing up the experiment."
Dr. Mac Cooper, who had taken the photo, he took the picture from the camera and then placed the camera on a nearby desk. Then he began fanning the photo while he replied to his colleague. "Oh, liven up, William. We all know that thing is basically indestructible." He chuckled and placed the picture into his coat pocket. Dr. Williams scoffed and turned back at the window.
Increasing voltage,
said one of the scientists. He started turning a dial very slowly. As he did this, the bolts of electricity from the coils began increasing in quantity, sometimes even combining into bigger bolts and hitting the monitor. Even still, the monitor remained visibly in perfect condition. But suddenly, there was a loud bang on the door at the back of the room, behind all the scientists. They all turned and stared at the wooden door behind them. There was another loud noise and the door shook, like someone was kicking the door trying to open it. Indeed, someone was, as after one more kick, the muffled voice of a monotone female could be heard from the other side.
"Come out now. The government wants their monitor back, and I will not hesitate to kill all of you to retrieve it."
Two scientists began to panic a bit, one of them being the one increasing the voltage on the control panel. Dr. Cooper and Dr. William started trying to reason with the woman behind the door.
You don't understand!
said Dr. William. "Leave us to our experiment, Fed," replied Cooper. There was no sound for a few seconds, besides the humming from the electronics and the sounds of electricity from behind the window. Then suddenly, there was an even louder noise. It was from the door getting violently kicked. It was loud enough to startle the scientist on the controls, causing him to accidentally turn the voltage to the maximum power via a knob on the control panel. It was at that point that all the scientists started to panic. There were 2 more final kicks before the door slammed open. And on the other side was the so-called Fed. It was a woman. She was wearing a white button-up, long-sleeved top and a black skirt. In her hand was a sword. It was a very thin sword, probably a rapier of some sort, and her face, half of it was metal, like a prosthetic face. But it was her face, and her hair was black, quite short as well. She stared Dr. Cooper in the eyes with a blank expression, as if she didn't just kick down the door in front of him. The Tesla coils in the test chamber, having been turned to full power, would begin to stroke the monitor with large and bright bolts of electricity, nothing like what it was getting hit with before, and the monitor screen started to bug out, glitching like crazy and even shaking a bit. The hum from the electronics inside seemed to cease as it all started coming from inside the test chamber, and it was slowly getting louder. Dr. Williams stood up from his chair and began yelling at the woman.
Stop! You don't know what you're doing!
The woman directed her gaze into the window of the test chamber as Dr. William continued yelling, causing the scientist next to him to panic even more, his hands shaking and unable to undo his mistake.
This could be a turning point in technology and science. If you stop us, then...
Dr. William would be interrupted by the extremely loud humming from inside the chamber and the incredibly bright blue light that was being emitted by the monitor, which now looked like a white silhouette of itself. Everyone in the room watched it for a moment. Dr. Cooper lunged for cover behind a wall. The woman noticed and grabbed him by the neck quickly. Then she held him up to the wall that he tried to hide behind by his neck and stared at him. The humming from the test chamber turned to a more violent humming, and eventually there was a bright blue explosion, destroying the control panel and everything in the first half of the room and launching the woman and Dr. Cooper backwards, rendering him unconscious. He was awoken by the woman, who lifted a large chunk of debris off of his legs. Afterwards, she took his hand and helped him stand up. They both looked and stared at the very large white opening of some sort in front of them. They could see some colors and shapes through it, as if it was a portal of some kind. But to where?